Get to the performance of the night. Monica McNutt. It came from Jimmy Butler as the Heat were hosting the Hawks in Game 2.
Jimmy was on fire. I mean, anytime Jimmy is shooting lights out from behind the three-point line, but then you got this kind of stuff? Come on, Greeny. This was the energy that the Heat needed to see.
And JJ, he was running the floor last night. He's doing it inside. He's doing it outside. He had it going from everywhere.
He's kind of got an unconventional game. He gets fouled a lot.
Right.
He shoots layups where he doesn't jump very high, and he rarely shoots threes, but he gets it done.
It gave the Heat an 11-point lead at the end of the third with that one there. Fourth quarter, Trae Young trying to keep his team in it with the corner three. He had 25. Hawks within 4, but in the end, it was too much Jimmy Butler. This time he does knock down a three.
I mean, he's on a mission. Like, at one point in this game, he was 4 of 7 from behind the arc. Greeny, like, when Jimmy Butler is giving you this, watch out.
Watch out for the Euro step here. 1-2, and it's good. Jimmy Butler had 45 plus 5 assists, 5 rebounds, and the Heat get the win by 10, so they're up 2-0. Butler again with the big numbers. Only 2 other players in Heat franchise history have had that stat line, 45, 5, and 5, and they are D-Wade and LeBron, who did it 10 years ago in an East Coast Finals game against Boston. And so, look, they sit there in the driver's seat in this series, and you don't ever want to project ahead, but I'm going to do it anyway right now. JJ, I'm looking at the Heat, and I'm looking at the Sixers, and it feels like a collision course. We've talked so much about Philly here, and I had Monica and a lot of other people yesterday telling me, slow down. When they run into this defense of the Heat, that's going to change everything. How about Miami right now?
I think it's a good matchup for Miami, and I would expect that to be a very competitive series. The thing about the Heat defense, they have multiple wing defenders, Jimmy Butler, P.J. Tucker, that can guard James Harden. And then on the interior, they have Bam Adebayo, who should have been maybe Defensive Player of the Year, but that's arguably. He only played 56 games. But his ability to switch on the perimeter, clog things up inside, protect the rim, and potentially at times guard Joel one-on-one. That's the problem that Raptors are having right now. They have no one that can even come close to guarding Joel one-on-one, and he's just picking them apart, target practice threes.
You know, Monica, I mean, the league is built so much on drama and storylines that it feels like all year long we talked about Boston, we talked about Brooklyn, we talk about Milwaukee because of Giannis, and we don't talk much about Miami. They're the number 1 seed. Are they the best team in the East as we stand here right now?
I'm still going with the Milwaukee Bucks as the best team in the East. However, I mean, look at how Miami is constructed. Did you know who Max Strus was if you're not a DePaul alum? I mean, all you heard was Jimmy Butler's out, Bam Adebayo's out, Kyle Lowry is missing time. If you're not familiar with Max Strus and Gabe Vincent and Omar Yurt 7, shout out to La Jolla, you didn't know what was going on in Miami, so it makes sense.
And so a lot of people don't. And the other name in that should be mentioned is Eric Spoelstra, because the reality is when we make the list of the best coaches in the NBA, and that matters a lot at this time of year, his name has to be up or at the top.
He's built, along with Pat Riley, he's built a culture and a trust with his players. Think about this. Duncan Robinson in Game 1 hits 8 threes and goes for 27 points. He played 7 minutes last night and didn't take a shot.
Wild.
Spoelstra has got those guys buying into the one agenda that matters. Winning a basketball game and of course winning a series. That's what matters. They built something in the bubble with this team, with this core group. And I expect them to make a deep run. I really do. But I agree with Monica. Let's not overthink it. The Bucks, when the big 3 plays, 35-10, most of those games without Brook Lopez, he's back playing like Brook Lopez.
All right, we'll see. Milwaukee back in action tonight against the Bulls. In the meantime, I want to go back to the Nets and Celtics for another storyline here. Speaking of drama, Kyrie fined $50,000 for flipping off the fans in Boston in Game 1. Here was his teammate KD talking about the fans' animosity towards the former Celtic.
I mean, it's rooted in love. They once loved you. They once cheered for you, and bought your merchandise, and had life-altering experiences coming to games, watching you play. So when it kind of gets ripped from them from just something like a trade or demanding a trade or wanting to leave, like they feel like a piece of them is gone too.
So this is a conversation you could take about as deep as you choose to. You can go just a little deep and say, is the $50,000 fine justified? Or you can go really deep into the relationships that exist between the fans and the players. One way or another, JJ, as one who played in the league a long time, what do you think of the situation with Kyrie and the fans and the way it was handled by the league?
He should have been fined, and so I agree with the fine. I want to acknowledge just Kevin Durant waxing poetic there. Just one of the best existential quotes I've seen from him. So good. No one knows better than me about fan abuse. So no one, trust me, no one knows better than me about fan abuse. Well, I have zero problem with what Kyrie did. And I'll be honest with you, at one point in time, I probably flicked off a fan. In college, I used to throw up a couple hand signals to UNC and Maryland fans. That's okay. It's part of the game. And guess what? If you are going to attack a player, dehumanize a player, berate a player, why should a player not be able to just throw up a hand signal?
I feel so validated, Greeny.
Because?
I didn't think this was a big deal. And I hated the fact that it trumped the story of an excellent basketball game. Meaning this series is is the best of the first round. And we're talking about some gestures. Mind you, it's not as if we don't know the history of Kyrie and these particular fans. So come on, let's go. Let's get to game 2.
Yeah, here's what I would say about the whole thing. I think everyone did what they're supposed to do.
Right.
The fans did what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to boo Kyrie and yell all sorts of things. If he wants to, he is supposed to react however he chooses to react, short of going into the stands and going after somebody. What he did is, at the end of the day, generally harmless. And the league did what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to make some statement that we can't accept this kind of behavior from our players, and so they fined him an amount of money that if it fell out of his pocket, he wouldn't even bother bending over to pick it up. So to me, JJ, everyone kind of did what they're supposed to do.
I agree with that. I also agree with Monica that this is taking away from a more important storyline, which is hopefully we get 7 games of elite basketball like we got in game 1. These two teams, to me, they're an even match.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing about this series. They're an even match. This is going to be a chess game, back and forth, and hopefully we get 7 games.
Well, there's a couple of ways to look at that. It was as even as a game could possibly be in game 1, and Kevin Durant couldn't possibly play worse. So it's in that regard, if you're rooting for Brooklyn, then maybe that sort of gives you a little bit of hope. I'll tell you what I'm intrigued by now. I need to go back and find the video of you taking on Maryland and Carolina. I need to find JJ surreptitiously flipping off the fan.
It wasn't, you know what? It was I'm not going to say what it was. There's a picture. You can find the picture. It was not a middle finger. It was a different hand gesture. It was a different hand gesture. I'm not proud of it.
Fair enough. No. Listen, I remember the way the fans treated you. You deserved at least that, if not more, in return. Okay, let me give you some of the big questions ahead of tonight's game 2 of this series. JJ, Kyrie Irving, over under 30 points tonight.
I'm taking the over on that. I'm taking the over that. His shot creation is elite. We saw him in the fourth quarter of game 1 getting to his spots and just knocking down tough shots at an elite level. This is what he does. He'll have more than 30 tonight. I believe that.
And he is that rare player in today's game that I think thrives on the animosity with the fans. Like, that used to be a thing. Now there's a level of sensitivity. Sometimes players don't handle that well. I think he loves it. Monica, KD or Jason Tatum? Who scores more tonight?
Oh, it's KD, Greeny. KD is on a mission. He's not going to put together 2 subpar games. We won't even call that first game bad. He's not going to have the turnovers. He's going to be elite and deliberate with his dribbling. Himbo gave me the stat. He was 5 of 9 when he took 1 dribble, 4 of 15 when he took more than 3.
Yeah, they were collapsing all over him. All right, finally, JJ, it's the big question. Are the Nets going to even this series tonight?
I think the Nets are going to even this series. We forget they should have won this game. The lack of execution from the time that Kyrie Irving made that 3, Boston calls us the timeout. There's 45 seconds left. Jaylen Brown scores in 6 seconds.
Right.
Then they don't call timeout and set up a play. Like, the lack of execution down the stretch to me is what lost the game.
But that's what I brought up Eric Spoelstra earlier. The coaching difference in this series could wind up being an enormous difference. The Boston's coach could be the coach of the year this year, and the Nets, look, no, they don't have a coach, right? I mean, KD and Kyrie said it. They don't want to be coached. They didn't make a single adjustment in that game. They didn't call a single play. There was no obvious evidence to me that there was any real coaching going on there at all. Am I overstating that?
I think, I don't know if that's a dig on Steve Nash or if that's a dig on Kevin and Kyrie. Look,
it's not a dig on anyone. It's an observation.
Out publicly before they even played a game for Steve Nash. He said, we don't really have a coach.
That's what I'm saying.
This is coaching by committee. So, yeah, I think that dynamic certainly exists there. But to suggest that Steve Nash is not trying to coach and is not building a game plan, he's doing that. I do have a problem with whatever was said in the huddle at that 45-second timeout. Nick Claxton is at the top of the key with his back turned to Jaylen Brown.
Right.
There's a direct driving lane. It is a one-possession game with 40 seconds. You have to play normal defense in that scenario. I do not know what was said to him in that huddle, so I'm not blaming Nick Claxton, but there's got to be better late-game execution.
So just to counter all that, we're talking about the net side. post-game, Ime Udoka talks about not needing to call a timeout because he trusted his squad. And so to me, that's why game 2 is so important, because if it comes down to X's and O's, edge Udoka.
This is an enormous first-round series, and we'll see the action tonight. Meanwhile, could we see another blockbuster trade?